I remember the exact moment the night stopped feeling real. The music was loud. The champagne glasses clinked together. People were cheering for us, but suddenly Adrian's phone rang. He stepped away from the reception table. His smile disappeared the moment he answered. I watched him from across the ballroom. His shoulders stiffened. His voice dropped low. Something was wrong. I could feel it before I understood it. Adrian Wolfe was a billionaire who controlled billion-dollar companies without blinking. Yet now he looked shaken. Then he turned toward the exit. He walked outside quickly. No explanation. No reassuring smile. Just silence. I tried to laugh it off when guests asked where my husband went. But a knot was already forming in my chest. Because something about that phone call felt dangerous. And I had no idea that within minutes, my sister-in-law would burst into my bridal suite carrying $50,000 in cash and tell me to run from my own wedding night. Elena Carter never imagined she would marry a billionaire. 6 months earlier, she had been living in a modest apartment near her architecture studio. Her life was simple. Design projects, coffee with coworkers, quiet nights sketching buildings. Then Adrian Wolfe walked into her office with a redevelopment proposal. He was calm, direct, powerful without needing to prove it. Their first meeting lasted 2 hours longer than planned, not because of business, because they kept talking. 3 weeks later, they had dinner. 2 months later, they were inseparable. And by the 4th month, Adrian had proposed during a quiet weekend overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Elena said yes without hesitation, but the Wolfe family didn't celebrate. They watched her, studied her, especially Vanessa Wolfe, Adrian's younger sister. Vanessa had never openly insulted Elena, but she had never smiled either. At the wedding reception that night, Vanessa stood near the champagne bar. Her eyes kept drifting toward the bride, like she was studying a puzzle piece that didn't belong. Adrian returned to the ballroom 10 minutes after taking the call. Elena immediately noticed the difference. His smile was forced. His eyes scanned the room quickly, like a man measuring threats. "Elena," he said softly when he reached her side. His hand squeezed hers, too tightly. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly. He hesitated, then nodded once. "Just business." That answer should have reassured her. Instead, it made the unease worse. Adrian rarely let business interrupt important moments, especially not their wedding night. But before Elena could press further, the photographer pulled them toward the dance floor. Music swelled, guests cheered. Adrian spun her into their first dance. His movements were smooth and confident. Yet Elena noticed something strange. His eyes kept drifting toward the ballroom entrance, like he was waiting for someone to arrive. After the dance, the reception continued late into the evening. Politicians, investors, celebrities, and tech executives filled the ballroom. Everyone wanted a moment with Adrian Wolfe. Everyone wanted a picture with the new Mrs. Wolfe. But Elena felt increasingly overwhelmed. Too many faces, too many whispers, too many people studying her like she had stepped into a world that wasn't meant for her. At one point, she overheard 2 investors talking nearby. "She seems nice," one said. "Nice doesn't survive in the Wolfe empire," the other replied quietly. Elena pretended she didn't hear it, but the words stayed with her. When Adrian finally leaned close again, she whispered, "Can we go upstairs soon?" He nodded quickly. "Yes, we should." His answer came too fast, almost like he had been waiting for that suggestion. The bridal suite inside the Wolfe penthouse hotel floor was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the glittering city skyline. White roses covered nearly every surface. Soft music played quietly from hidden speakers. It looked like the perfect ending to the perfect wedding. Adrian walked inside first. He placed his phone on the table. Then he poured 2 glasses of champagne, but he didn't drink. Instead, he kept checking the phone screen. Elena noticed immediately. "You're still thinking about that call," she said. Adrian gave a small smile. "Just loose ends." He stepped closer and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I promise tonight is about us." But the phone buzzed again. His jaw tightened, and he picked it up immediately. Adrian answered the call quietly and stepped toward the balcony. The glass doors slid shut behind him. Elena couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see everything. His posture changed again. One hand pressed against the balcony railing. The other gripped the phone tightly. His expression turned cold, controlled, dangerous. The same look she had seen once when he negotiated with aggressive investors. The look of a man entering a battlefield. When the call ended, Adrian stood still for several seconds. Then he slowly exhaled. When he came back inside, Elena searched his face. "Adrian, what's going on?" He hesitated again, then said only one sentence. "Something unexpected." And before Elena could ask another question, someone pounded violently on the suite door. The knocking came again, urgent, panicked. Adrian opened the door. Vanessa Wolfe rushed inside. Her normally perfect composure was gone. Her hair was slightly messy. Her breathing was uneven. She carried a black leather bag in her hand. Adrian frowned immediately. "Vanessa, what?" She cut him off. "Not now." Her eyes shifted directly to Elena. Something in them looked desperate. Adrian looked confused. Vanessa stepped forward quickly. "Elena, we need to talk." Adrian crossed his arms. "This isn't the time." Vanessa turned sharply toward him. "It absolutely is." Then she grabbed Elena's wrist and pulled her toward the bedroom door. Vanessa shut the bedroom door behind them. The sound echoed sharply. Elena's heart started racing. "What's happening?" she asked. Vanessa didn't answer immediately. Instead, she placed the leather bag on the bed. Her hands trembled slightly as she unzipped it. Then she turned the bag upside down. Bundles of cash spilled across the white sheets. Thick stacks, $100 bills. More money than Elena had ever seen in one place. $50,000, Vanessa said quickly. Elena stared at the money in disbelief. "What is this?" Vanessa grabbed her shoulders. Her voice dropped into a whisper. "You need to leave tonight." Elena felt the room spin. "What?" Vanessa leaned closer. "Take the money. Disappear. And don't tell Adrian I warned you." I felt like my brain had stopped working. My wedding dress rustled as I stepped backward from the bed. "Why would I run from my own wedding?" I asked. Vanessa looked toward the closed bedroom door nervously. Then she whispered something that froze the blood in my veins. "Because someone in this family is about to destroy you." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. Vanessa continued speaking rapidly. "They're planning to frame you for corporate fraud. Millions of dollars will disappear from a shell company. And legally, it will all lead back to you." My heart slammed in my chest. "That's insane." Vanessa shook her head. "No, it's already happening." Then she leaned closer and delivered the final blow. "By tomorrow morning, you could be the most wanted criminal in the Wolfe Empire." And suddenly, that strange phone call Adrian took earlier didn't feel like coincidence anymore. Elena stood frozen beside the bed covered in cash. The words Vanessa had just spoken echoed inside her mind. Corporate fraud. Millions missing. Her name attached to everything. "That makes no sense," Elena said slowly. Vanessa shook her head impatiently. "It makes perfect sense if someone wants Adrian weakened." Elena stared at her. "What does that have to do with me?" Vanessa exhaled sharply. "You married him." The sentence hung heavy in the air. Elena Carter suddenly becoming Elena Wolfe gives enemies leverage. Elena's chest tightened. Vanessa continued speaking quickly. "If a scandal hits tonight, Adrian loses credibility with investors tomorrow. And if the scandal involves his new wife?" Vanessa didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The implication was clear. Elena shook her head slowly. "Maha, you're asking me to believe that someone arranged an entire wedding just to frame me?" Vanessa's eyes hardened. "You clearly don't understand how power works in this family." In the living room outside the bedroom, Adrian paced slowly near the windows. His phone remained in his hand. He wasn't calling anyone. He was waiting. His mind was calculating possibilities. The call earlier had confirmed his worst suspicion. Someone inside the Wolfe network had moved money through a ghost corporation. The pattern matched something he had been tracking for weeks. Tonight's wedding had never been just a celebration. It had also been bait, a trap designed to expose whoever was manipulating his company from inside. But now Vanessa had shown up unexpectedly. That complication worried him. Vanessa rarely panicked. If she was acting this desperate, something in the plan had shifted. Adrian looked toward the closed bedroom door. His instincts told him Elena might already be involved in the chaos. And that possibility bothered him more than anything else. Inside the bedroom, Elena's thoughts raced wildly. Vanessa kept glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to burst in. Elena, you don't have time to argue, Vanessa said. Take the money and leave. Right now. Elena crossed her arms. You've spent 6 months barely speaking to me. And now you're suddenly my guardian angel? Vanessa's expression tightened. I didn't trust you before. The honesty caught Elena off guard. But this isn't about trust anymore, Vanessa continued. This is about survival. She gestured toward the cash. That money will get you out of the city tonight. Elena shook her head again. If what you're saying is real, running would make me look guilty. Vanessa paused. For the first time, she looked uncertain. You don't understand how dangerous this situation is, she said quietly. Elena, people in this family don't lose quietly. Elena turned away from the bed slowly. Her eyes landed on Adrian's laptop sitting on a small desk near the window. The screen was dark, but something about its presence suddenly bothered her. Vanessa noticed where she was looking. Her eyes widened slightly. Elena, don't touch that. The warning came too late. Elena walked toward the desk. Her heart pounded harder with each step. She opened the laptop. The screen lit instantly. Several financial files were already open. Columns of numbers, corporate account transfers, legal ownership documents. Vanessa cursed under her breath. Elena leaned closer to the screen. One line of text caught her attention immediately. A shell corporation name. Below it, listed clearly as primary legal owner, Elena Carter. Her stomach dropped. Elena scrolled through the documents slowly. Her pulse roared in her ears. The files detailed massive money transfers. Millions of dollars moving through a company she had never heard of. And every legal signature traced back to her identity, her name, her digital authorization, her supposed control of the accounts. This is impossible, she whispered. Vanessa stepped beside her. That's the setup. Elena's fingers trembled on the keyboard. If authorities investigate this, I'll be the first suspect. Vanessa nodded grimly. Exactly. Elena leaned back in the chair. For the first time that night, real fear spread through her chest. Someone had built an entire financial crime around her identity, and it was already documented, already structured, already waiting to explode. The realization felt like cold water pouring over her head. Who would do this? She asked quietly. Vanessa's answer came instantly. Someone inside the Wolfe empire. Footsteps sounded outside the bedroom. Both women froze. The door handle turned slowly. Adrian stepped inside. His eyes moved immediately to the laptop, then to the money on the bed, then to Elena. Silence filled the room. Adrian's expression hardened. Who told you? He asked calmly. Elena felt her throat tighten. Vanessa crossed her arms defensively. I did. Adrian's gaze shifted to his sister. For a moment, the siblings stared at each other. Years of complicated history passed between them silently. You weren't supposed to interfere, Adrian said quietly. Vanessa laughed bitterly. Interfere? You used your wife as bait. Elena's head snapped toward Adrian. Bait? The word echoed painfully inside her mind. Adrian walked slowly toward the desk. He closed the laptop gently. Then he looked directly at Elena. His voice remained controlled. I was going to explain everything tomorrow. Elena stared at him in disbelief. Tomorrow? You let me walk into this without warning? Adrian inhaled deeply. The situation is complicated. Vanessa scoffed loudly. That's one way to describe framing your own wife in a financial trap. Adrian turned sharply toward her. It wasn't a frame. It was a test. Elena felt anger rising in her chest. A test that puts me in prison? She snapped. Adrian didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked toward the bedroom door, then back at Elena. His voice lowered slightly. The person behind this scheme thinks you're the weak link. And tonight, they're expecting their plan to work. Elena folded her arms tightly. So you built fake fraud documents using my identity? Yes, Adrian said quietly. And you didn't think I deserved to know? Adrian hesitated. If the plan leaked early, the real criminal would disappear. Vanessa stepped forward angrily. Or maybe you just assumed Elena was expendable. Adrian's jaw tightened. That's not what this is. Elena's voice came out colder than she expected. Then what is it? Adrian looked directly at her. A trap. He gestured toward the laptop. Those financial trails are monitored. The moment someone moves the stolen funds through that account, we'll know who it is. Elena felt the tension building again. And you're sure it will happen tonight? Adrian nodded once. Yes. But before he could explain further, the bedroom door burst open again. Vanessa rushed inside again, breathing hard. Her phone was in her hand. Her face looked even more alarmed than before. You're both wasting time, she said urgently. Adrian frowned. What happened? Vanessa turned the phone screen toward them. A banking alert flashed across it. The Shell Corporation account had just been accessed. Millions of dollars were being transferred, right now. Adrian's eyes sharpened instantly. Elena, he said calmly, the trap just closed. Vanessa shook her head quickly. No, you don't understand. She looked between them with sudden dread. The transfer didn't come from the board. It came from someone much closer. Adrian's expression darkened. Who? Vanessa swallowed slowly. Then she revealed the name that would shatter the entire Wolfe family. Uncle Victor. The room fell into a deep silence after Vanessa spoke the name. Victor Wolfe. Elena looked between the two siblings. She had met Victor only once before, at a quiet family dinner weeks earlier. He had seemed calm, charming, a little too charming. Your uncle? Elena asked slowly. Adrian's expression hardened. Yes, Vanessa nodded grimly. He controls several divisions of the company. And he's been fighting Adrian for influence for years. Elena felt a cold wave of realization. So if I'm accused of fraud, Vanessa finished the thought, Adrian loses credibility. Investors panic. Victor takes control. Adrian stepped toward the window. His voice turned sharp and controlled. He must believe the plan worked. Elena stared at him. Meaning? Adrian looked back at her. He thinks you're already trapped. The weight of that truth settled heavily in the room. And suddenly Elena realized something terrifying. Victor wasn't expecting resistance tonight. He was expecting celebration. Adrian walked toward the desk again. He reopened the laptop. Lines of financial data refreshed on the screen. The transfer was still moving, millions flowing through the Shell account. Adrian's fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. Vanessa watched the screen anxiously. He's emptying the account, she said. Adrian nodded. That's the final step. Elena leaned closer. Explain. Adrian pointed at the transaction trail. Victor moves the money through this account. The records show you as the owner. And tomorrow morning, Elena Wolfe becomes the headline. Elena's stomach tightened. Fraud, embezzlement, corporate scandal. Her entire future destroyed overnight. But Adrian's expression suddenly changed. A faint smile appeared. Elena, he said calmly. Yes? He just confessed. Both women looked confused. Adrian turned the laptop slightly. A small recording icon blinked in the corner of the screen. Every transaction, every access point, every authorization, all tied directly to Victor Wolfe's secure credentials. The trap had worked. Elena felt the tension in her chest slowly shift. Wait, she said. You already caught him. Adrian nodded slightly. The moment he accessed the account using his credentials. Vanessa frowned, but he could still deny it. Adrian leaned back in the chair. That's why tonight isn't finished yet. Elena studied his face carefully. You're planning something else. Adrian closed the laptop. Yes? Vanessa crossed her arms. You're baiting him. Adrian didn't deny it. He believes Elena is already trapped. So he'll want confirmation. Elena's pulse quickened again. What kind of confirmation? Adrian looked at her calmly. He'll want to celebrate. The realization hit Vanessa first. You're going to call him. Adrian nodded once. And invite him here. Elena felt the plan forming around her like a tightening circle. You're serious? She asked. Adrian picked up his phone. He expects victory tonight. So we give him the illusion. Vanessa stepped closer. And when he arrives? Adrian looked toward the living room. Everything will already be waiting. Elena felt another wave of uncertainty. Everything? Adrian's voice remained calm. Investigators, legal witnesses, and the police. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. You called them already? Adrian nodded. Before the wedding even started. Elena stared at him. So this entire night, Adrian met her gaze, was a trap. The weight of that truth settled again. But this time, Elena understood something important. Adrian hadn't been trying to destroy her. He had been trying to destroy the enemy hiding inside his own family. Adrian stepped into the living room. Elena and Vanessa followed. The skyline outside glittered with midnight lights. Adrian placed the phone on speaker. The line rang twice. Then a calm voice answered. Adrian. Victor Wolfe. Adrian's tone shifted instantly. Relaxed. Almost amused. Uncle. A pause. Victor sounded curious. Shouldn't you be enjoying your wedding night? Adrian laughed lightly. Oh, I am. Elena felt chills hearing the casual performance. Victor continued. I assume everything went smoothly? Adrian glanced at Elena briefly. Better than expected. Another pause. Then Victor chuckled quietly. Well, congratulations. Adrian walked toward the bar. Why don't you come by the penthouse? Let's toast the future. Victor didn't hesitate. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The call ended, and the room suddenly felt very small. Elena exhaled slowly. That man just tried to destroy me, she said quietly. Vanessa nodded. And he thinks you're already finished. Adrian poured 3 glasses of water instead of champagne. We have one chance to close this cleanly. Elena looked at him. What do you need me to do? Adrian hesitated, then he answered honestly. Act normal. Vanessa smirked slightly. That might be the hardest part tonight. Elena gave a dry laugh. You're not wrong. But inside she felt something new growing. Resolve. Whoever Victor Wolfe was, he had tried to ruin her life before it even began. And now he was walking directly into the consequences. 15 minutes passed slowly. Every sound in the hallway felt amplified. Then the elevator chimed outside the suite. Footsteps approached the door. Elena's pulse raced again. Adrian's expression turned calm and unreadable. Vanessa moved quietly toward the hallway. 2 men in dark suits stepped out from a hidden room. Investigators. They waited silently near the corridor. Adrian walked toward the door. He opened it smoothly. Victor Wolfe stepped inside. He wore a tailored suit and an easy smile. Adrian, he said warmly, congratulations. His eyes moved to Elena. And welcome to the family. Elena forced a polite smile, but inside she felt the storm building, because the man shaking her hand had just tried to frame her for a crime. Victor walked farther into the living room. He looked relaxed, comfortable, like a man who believed the night belonged to him. He accepted a glass from Adrian. Quite the celebration, Victor said casually. Adrian nodded. It's been an interesting evening. Victor glanced briefly at Elena. I heard there may be some financial complications. Elena forced her voice steady. Oh? Victor smiled faintly. Nothing serious, I'm sure. Adrian leaned casually against the bar. Actually, something interesting did happen tonight. Victor raised an eyebrow. Adrian tapped the laptop on the counter. A rather large transaction. Victor's eyes flickered for just a fraction of a second, but Elena noticed. Adrian opened the screen slowly, and the trap began to close. Adrian rotated the laptop screen toward Victor. Numbers filled the display. Transfer records, access logs, account credentials. Victor studied it calmly. Then he chuckled. You really think this proves anything? Adrian didn't respond immediately. Instead, he pressed one key. A recorded audio file began playing. Victor's voice filled the room. Clear, undeniable, discussing the fraud plan with one of his associates earlier that evening. Elena watched Victor's expression change. The calm smile disappeared. Vanessa crossed her arms. Still think it proves nothing? Victor slowly placed his glass on the table. For the first time, he looked nervous, and behind him the investigators stepped forward. The room shifted instantly. Victor Wolfe's relaxed posture disappeared. His shoulders stiffened. His eyes moved quickly around the penthouse. He saw the investigators standing behind him. 2 uniformed officers stepped quietly into the living room from the hallway. For the first time that night, Victor looked cornered. Adrian closed the laptop slowly. You moved the money exactly like we predicted, Adrian said calmly. Victor laughed, but the sound lacked confidence. You think a recording and a transaction log will hold up in court? Adrian leaned against the bar. They will when they include your voice authorizing the entire scheme. Victor's jaw tightened. His gaze slid toward Elena. So the bride figured it out. Elena felt anger burn through her chest. No, she said firmly. But you did. Victor tilted his head slightly. For someone new to the family, you adapted quickly. Elena held his gaze without blinking. You tried to destroy my life. Victor shrugged lightly. Collateral damage. Vanessa stepped forward sharply. You underestimated her. Victor smirked faintly. No, I underestimated Adrian. The investigators moved closer. The trap had fully closed. One of the investigators placed a file on the glass table. Victor Wolfe, he said calmly, you're being detained for questioning regarding financial fraud and conspiracy. Victor's smile returned slowly. You're moving a little fast. The investigator opened the file. Inside were printed records, transaction authorizations, voice recordings, digital signatures. Each page linked directly to Victor. Adrian folded his arms. You moved the funds through the shell company. Victor shrugged. Your wife's company. Elena stepped forward. You forged my ownership. Victor's smile sharpened. That was the plan. The officer looked at Victor. And you confirmed it in the recording. Victor's eyes darkened. Silence filled the room. Vanessa watched him carefully. You should have stopped while you were ahead, she said quietly. Victor shook his head slowly. No one stays ahead forever. The officers moved closer. The moment had arrived. Victor looked directly at Adrian. You really set all of this up on your wedding night? Adrian nodded once. You forced my hand. Victor laughed softly. You always were ruthless. Adrian didn't respond. Victor's gaze moved again to Elena. I almost feel sorry for you. Elena met his stare coldly. You should feel sorry for yourself. Victor raised an eyebrow. Why? Elena took a breath, then spoke clearly. Because you thought I was the easiest target in the room. The officers stepped beside Victor. One reached for the cuffs. Victor exhaled slowly. Well, he said quietly, I suppose the evening didn't go exactly as planned. Adrian's voice remained calm. No, it didn't. The cuffs clicked shut. Victor Wolfe was finally out of moves. The officers escorted Victor toward the door. He paused briefly before leaving. His eyes lingered on Adrian. You won this round? Adrian said nothing. Victor looked at Vanessa next. You always had good instincts. Vanessa crossed her arms. You should have listened to yours. Finally, Victor glanced at Elena. You survived your first Wolfe family battle. Elena didn't answer. Victor gave a faint smile. Let's see how many more you survive. The officers guided him out. The penthouse door closed behind them, and the tension that had filled the room all night finally began to fade. Silence filled the suite. The city skyline still glittered outside the windows, but the atmosphere felt completely different now. Vanessa exhaled deeply. Well, she said, that was dramatic. Adrian rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't expect him to confess so easily. Elena sat down slowly. Her legs finally felt weak. Vanessa looked at her. You okay? Elena nodded faintly. I think so. She looked at Adrian. You could have warned me. Adrian's expression softened. You're right. The honesty surprised her. I should have trusted you with the truth. For the first time that night, Adrian looked genuinely apologetic. Adrian sat beside Elena. I never intended for you to feel like a target, he said quietly. Elena studied him carefully. But I was. Adrian nodded. Yes. Vanessa leaned against the wall. In fairness, Victor would have used anyone Adrian cared about. Elena looked at the cash still scattered on the bedroom bed. The $50,000. Vanessa laughed softly. That was my emergency plan. Elena stood and walked toward the bedroom. She picked up one of the bundles. Then she carried the bag back into the living room. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. You keeping it? Elena placed the bag back in Vanessa's hands. No. Vanessa blinked. Why not? Elena smiled slightly. Because I'm not running. The first light of morning began creeping across the skyline. Hours had passed. Phones buzzed continuously with notifications, news alerts, breaking headlines, corporate fraud scandal inside the Wolfe empire. Victor Wolfe detained, investigations expanding. Vanessa scrolled through the headlines and whistled. Well, the media found out fast. Adrian leaned back in his chair. That was inevitable. Elena watched the sunrise through the massive windows. Her name appeared in several articles, but not as a suspect, as the woman who helped expose the crime. She felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. Just hours earlier, she had almost become the villain of the story. Now everything had flipped. Vanessa stepped closer to Elena. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. Elena looked at her. For what? Vanessa crossed her arms. I assumed you married Adrian for the money. Elena laughed softly. That seems to be a common assumption. Vanessa shook her head. Tonight proved something else. Elena tilted her head slightly. What's that? Vanessa smiled faintly. You're tougher than anyone expected. Adrian chuckled quietly. I knew that already. Elena looked between them. For the first time since the wedding began, the tension between the three of them felt lighter, almost like the beginning of real trust.